Hey, good morning. Here we are again. Yes, indeed, it's time for another breakfast with Jesus and you. Thanks so much. I appreciate having this opportunity as always, and just, being able to share some thoughts with you as we continue our journey into the shared life that we have with Christ. Just some good stuff. Glad to be with you. Hope your day's starting off well. We are in this midst of the dog days of summer, and it's always interesting to see who's around, who's away, and what people are doing. Hopefully I'll get some vacation time at some point this year. It's been a really crazy year. So many different things going on that have kind of kept me anchored to the home front, but sometimes life gets like that and you just got to roll with it, right? My goodness. But so hey, good morning to all of you awesome breakfast clubbers. Let's see, Linda, Shalom, Ada, good morning, Jack. There's Susan and Donna and Angela. Good morning to all of you. Maria and let's see, Donna and Gail and Norma Jean, Pete, good to see you as well. Jack, good morning. My goodness. Y'all just piling in here. Thank you very much. It's nice to know I got a small group of folks that are right here with me virtually, but no, it's great. So yesterday I shared with you some thoughts on the transfiguration of Christ, and man, if you missed that, you do want to go and catch that one. It's pretty deep stuff, but I think it's so important that we understand why Jesus experienced this transfiguration on the top of the mountain where he began to just shine brightly, and what that means for you and I. Just powerful stuff, and I don't want to go back over that, but today I want to share with you some thoughts on Peter's reaction. Boy, thank God for Peter. We just learned so much from that brother's reactions and responses to the stuff that went on around him, because he's really like every man. If you're familiar with that concept of the everyman, just someone that really truly does seem to represent what most of us go through or experience. I mean, Jesus is the ultimate everyman, because he is and was touched with all of the feelings of our infirmities, as the writer of Hebrews says, right? So, but Peter, oh my gosh, his foibles and idiosyncrasies are on full display in the gospel, and this is no exception here with this amazing event that he and James and John were witness to. I can, well imagine that they're there with Jesus, and then all of a sudden, Jesus starts to glow, and if that wasn't enough, Moses and Elijah show up. I mean, wait, what? Here's my question. How did they know it was Moses and Elijah? I mean, did they have a name tag? I mean, maybe it was just, through the conversation that Jesus had with them, that they were able to deduce that one of them was Moses and the other was Elijah. I don't know. So here's Jesus, having this crazy encounter where he's glowing and he's talking with Moses and Elijah. Wow. So I'm not being too hard on Peter. When I say that it's understandable, that they were so thoroughly, freaked out over what was going on. As a matter of fact, let's see. Yeah, verse 6, I'm in Matthew 17, is that when the disciples heard the voice of the Father, they fell on their faces and were much afraid. I think they were probably much afraid before that as well. It's like, what's happening? You know. But Peter's response, oh my gosh. You know, a number of years ago, the Lord began to speak to me concerning how Peter responded to this event, right? And the response that he had, which was basically, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 tabernacles here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. What's fascinating to me about this is that Peter is here talking about building something. And it's just so much our human nature to want to do that. We want to build something to memorialize, to commemorate. And there is some basis for that, mostly in the Old Testament, where they would build something like an altar or some other, I think it was the stones that were placed in the middle of the Jordan when they crossed over into Israel. So there are these memorial kind of things that Israel would do, and so part of their culture, right? But it's nonetheless a very human kind of a response, to want to memorialize and build something. I think we have to kind of reference back to what Jesus said when Peter first made that awesome confession that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus said it's on the rock of that confession, of that hearing the revelation from the heart of the Father. It's upon that, he said, that I will build my church. So Jesus is the builder. He's the one that is actually doing the work of building something that will be powerful and eternal and all of that. And we're part of that because we are his body. We are the church, the ecclesia, as it says in the Greek, right? So Peter, oh my gosh, here he is, James and John with him. He sees Moses, Elijah, and Jesus. And his first reaction is, I want to memorialize this. And as I looked at that, as the Lord began to speak to me about it, he basically told me that this is the 3 responses that many people have, that really much of the church, I'm talking about the organized church now, much of the organized church is structured around one of these 3 tabernacles. That we are doing this. What Peter wanted to do has been done and is being done. It's been done throughout church history and it still exists today. So what do these tabernacles actually represent? Well, as I said, it's an attempt to memorialize something. Now, you might say, well, what's wrong with that? What could be wrong with wanting to build something to commemorate, to remember, to honor some major thing that the Lord did? What could be wrong with that? Well, first of all, consider the fact that Jesus didn't give Peter permission to do that. And consider the fact that the Father didn't speak to that either when his voice was heard. So, what do these tabernacles actually represent? Well, I'm just sharing with you what the Lord gave me as I was really pondering all of this. He broke it down into 3 views or perspectives that a lot of us can have about, God and about his dealings. Moses represents the past move of God and all that came as a result of that. Moses, obviously, as the leader of Israel, he implemented and instituted many kinds of things and traditions, and he obviously was the lawgiver, right, or the law transmitter. God gave him the law, and then he transmitted that, conveyed that to the nation of Israel. So in his role, right, he was someone that created a structure that Israel lived within, the Old Covenant, the law, right? It was a powerful move of God, and God did many miracles in the nation of Israel, in bringing them out of Egypt and establishing them in the Promised Land. Many, many things. But the tendency that we have as humans is to look at any major move of God, especially if we were part of it, to then take that and say, yes, this is the move of God. This is what God did, and he's doing this, and that's all we're going to focus on. In other words, the perspective is a backward-looking one. It is a continual look toward the past, toward maybe the good old days, when we were really, God was moving. And so that perspective is always wanting to see a repeat of whatever God did. It was so great. Wasn't it great back then when things were happening and all this was going on? God was moving and there were miracles and, whatever it might be. That is building a tabernacle to a past move of God. And, oh man, you can go, almost anywhere, around the world, and you will find churches and streams that is all they do. They're just focused on that move of God, that thing that God did in their history, and everything that they are today is based on that. They haven't moved an inch off of whatever that was, that God did in their day. Now, some of that, is okay, because there should be a maintaining of truth that God brought to bear into the body of Christ. As I mentioned the other day, there's this whole stream of Reformation that began with Martin Luther and his 95 Theses. All of everything that went on, if you trace out the history of the church, there were these eras where God was restoring specific truths back to the church, all the way up until, the past 20 or so years, when we began to fully, maybe not fully, we began to understand more what the apostolic looked like, right? So yeah, there is going to be this need to hold to that, whatever that truth was that God restored back to the church, but to maintain your focus strictly on that past thing that God did, and that's all that you look at, and that's what defines you. Not good. Now you've got Elijah. Now Elijah, of course, as a prophet, one of the things that he did was to speak about the things that the Lord wanted to do. Prophecy, obviously back in his day, there was a lot of correction and speaking to the errors of the day. But Elijah typically would represent, in terms of the prophetic, the next thing that God is going to do. In other words, the focus here is to build something that is constantly waiting for and wanting, desiring, going after the next thing that God is going to do or about to do. The focus is always on the future. What is God saying about the future? What is he wanting to do that we're waiting on him for, you know. And I've been in streams like that in my own life. Listen, I was in a Moses stream for most of my life, where everything that we focused on had been codified and put into place by, you know, preceding generations. And I've been in streams where always it was, well, what's God going to do next? You know, what's the next thing? We're on the way. We're moving forward toward the next thing that God is doing. But that was all it was something got built where the people of God were constantly looking to the future, and in doing so, basically ignored the present. See, that's the problem. Whether you're looking always at the past and what God did back then and hoping he'll do it again, or you're constantly focused on the future and what is God saying he's going to do, your focus is not at all on the present. Okay? And so that forward-looking kind of a thing is just as defective. I know that's a rough word, but it's just as defective as the past-looking kind of a stream. And so neither of those are appropriate for us. Now, the third tabernacle, you know, you might sit there, well, oh my gosh, what could possibly be wrong with creating something that would memorialize and honor Jesus? Because that's right. Peter said, I'm going to build 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. What could possibly be wrong with what you know, building something to honor Christ? Well, first of all, Jesus said, don't be building stuff, all right? Your job is to build people, is to edify people, right? That's what we're called to do, to raise up people who know Jesus and can walk with him and experience the life that he died for us to have, right? That's our focus. So building a tabernacle, a memorial for Christ. Well, typically what that looks like is God will give a vision, give a purpose for a particular gathering, a church, right? And the vision, which is a legitimate word that the Lord spoke, you guys are going to be engaged in this, in your area, in your city, right? So you get a vision for that. But that vision becomes written in stone, okay? It's like, yes, Jesus spoke to us and this is what he said, and so we're going to hold fast to that. It happened in the recent history of the church. It's not like something that was, you know, a generation or two ago, which what Moses would represent. It's an attempt to try as humanly possible to create something where we're now controlling whatever it was that Jesus said he wanted to do, whatever the Father spoke, whatever the revelation was that, you know, the purpose, the vision that church was called to carry. Well, that becomes memorialized. That becomes put in place to such an extent that that's all that the focus is. Well, this is what we're called to do. You know, anything that may come down the road that the Lord would be saying, well, here, I want you to do this. No, this is what we're supposed to do. This is the word we received. We made a memorial to what Jesus, you know, what he said to us, what he was wanting at that point in our ministry, and by golly, that's what we're going to focus on. You see, that approach, again, you would think, well, what's wrong with that? Well, what's wrong with that is that the Lord never stays in the same place in terms of what he's doing. You know, this is a dynamic flow, a relationship with him that is going to develop. It's going to evolve And as we grow, things are going to change. You know, whatever it was that he spoke at a particular time, even in our own life, right? If God speaks to you and says, this is what I have for you. Well, that idea, that picture, that vision that you may have for your life that you received back in that day, right? That's not going to stay the same, because you and I don't stay the same. At least we're not supposed to. All right. But yet many people, they're robbed of the full thing that God wants because they're so fixated on the one thing that he spoke to them. And it's legitimate. It was a powerful word. But he's wanting to add to that. He's wanting to modify and to shift and to bring even more into that as we grow and as we mature, because we can only handle so much in this growth process. When we're starting out, when we're, young and perhaps immature in the Lord, he's not going to give us the full thing. I look back on the things that he showed me 20, 30 years ago. Can I compare that with what he's shown me over the past 5 or 10 years? It's night and day. I mean, now it's all still along the same general lines. Your underlying purpose and vision doesn't change, but the manifestation of that, the outworking of that, it absolutely changes. Because again, we change, we're growing, we're maturing, we're becoming more responsible for the things that God's called us to. So it's going to grow. Whatever it is that he's called us into, it's going to grow. And as a matter of fact, what he wants to really show you is so big, it'll freak you out. Because you'll look at it and go, there's no way I can do that. What are you, crazy? I can't do that. Yet that's what he has for each of us on some level, okay? So building a monument, building a tabernacle to Jesus and staying stuck at whatever point of revelation that he gave you, he doesn't want that either. So what is the answer? Well, the Father speaks to Peter, James, and John, and he gives us the answer. I'm just so grateful that this was recorded. He says, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased. Hear him." I think one of the other Gospels just phrases it, "Listen to him." Okay? And, in the Greek language, the tenses matter. And this is in the present tense. And while for us, who are English speakers, we understand the present tense, I walk, right? Or I run or whatever. But in the Greek, there is this idea that it is continual. It never stops, whatever it is, right? Now, obviously, it doesn't always apply, but in most cases, you can interpret a present tense Greek word to mean never stop, continually. And so it's continually hear him. Why? Because it's a relationship. Because he is always going to want to, add to, maybe even take away. He says, you know what, the thing I told you about, you're done with that. It's time to move on, right? So our challenge really is, are we willing to simply hear him and obey? Or are we going to worship the tabernacles that we've created, looking back at that past move of God and how we wish it would happen again, right? Or continually looking forward to whatever is the next thing that God says he wants to do and is going to do, and we're trying to move forward to that. Or even staying fixated on something that the Lord spoke to you and never moving past that. Either way, I entitled this particular broadcast, "Your Building Permit is Denied." We are not allowed to do any of those three things. We are simply to walk with Him in this oneness, hearing Him and doing whatever it is that He tells us in the moment, and looking to that next thing that is truly the next thing that He says, okay, here's where I'm sending you. Here's where I want you to go. Okay. Do you see how simple that is? It is really simple. I always think of Andrew Womack. He says, you need help to be confused about that. It's just that simple. You need help to not understand that one. And so that's really what we can glean from this rather interesting event where Peter just gets overwhelmed and yet says something that is so naturally human, wanting to build monuments to things that will absolutely take us away from our day-to-day, moment-by-moment focus on our relationship with Christ. So I hope that's helpful for you. It really is simple. I love the fact that He did not make this complicated. He put a child out and said, look, this is right here. Just be childlike. As you mature, remain childlike. Okay? It is possible. And so that's what we're going to do. I hope that's helpful for you. Let's say good morning to the rest of this awesome breakfast club. Man, look at you all just jumping in here. Where did I leave off? My goodness. I got to scroll all the way back up here. All right. Well, I hope I catch all of you guys. Let's see. Clara, Candy, good morning. Let's see. Ralph and Rosa, Princess, Allison, Kathy, Aloha, Jane, Candy. I don't know if I said hi to all you guys yet. Joanne and Tracy, Fred, Enrique. I think you're new. Welcome. Patty, good morning. Donna Ann. What else do we have here? Who else do we have here? Lisa, good morning. Good to see you as well. I think I got everybody. If I didn't, please forgive me. I get a little lost in the feed here. But thank you so much. And thank you to each of you that is being so kind to share this with your friends. I love seeing these new folks jump in. And please feel free to reach out if you'd like to chat about anything that I'm sharing, if you have questions, or, maybe I could help you get some clarity on where God's taking you. So have an awesome day, and pray you get a chance to be a blessing to somebody as you are on your way. Okay? Look forward to being back tomorrow, 8:30 Eastern. All right, till then, see ya.